Okay, welcome everyone. My name's Laura Gadenik. I'm the TICN program coordinator. I've been working with TICN since 2019, and then went to the U for MSW program, and now I'm also a therapist at Healing Pathways, CSW. And yeah, we started TICN, or Kristen co-founded TICN back in 2014, so it's been about a decade. And it's shifted around a lot. Mostly these days, we try to do monthly presentations, offer CEUs, and we do more like a quarterly newsletter. It kind of scaled back after COVID. So um, that's a little bit about TICN. And I will introduce Olivia Verbeck. So Olivia has been helping individuals break free and get the life they want for over a decade. She is an international selling author and is fully licensed as a clinical mental health counselor and a substance use disorder counselor. Olivia has developed a curriculum for outpatient substance abuse treatment groups and developed a domestic violence treatment program for lower risk individuals. Olivia is a mother, author, therapist, and dog lover. She enjoys kayaking, reading, and binging new television series. Olivia takes great joy in watching others be set free. And with that, I will turn it over to Olivia. And if she wants to say anything else about herself, feel free.
No, I think you got it all. So we're good. Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you so much, Laura. Thanks so much for being willing to allow me to come and for Carrie for setting, like making the connection. So as Laura said, yeah, my name is Olivia. And a few years ago, first, I think the majority on here are clinicians, but it's okay if you're not. This is a model that you can learn once and use it for the rest of your life. So the training is geared toward someone who is going to be using it, but really in your home, in your community, right? And in your practice, if that's your goal as well. So a few years ago, I noticed that helping clients with boundaries, it seemed like we had a lot of ideas around boundaries, but when it comes to needing help with boundaries, we have very specific questions, right? So we're trying to use ideas to answer these really specific questions, and it's not always that clear, and it's even less clear for clients, right? So from that came a lot of conversations, and then I developed the relationship trust boundary model. So here is the book that I wrote, and this is a training that I'm going to give you today. So by the time you leave today, you're going to be fully equipped with the model so that you can take it into your homes, your community, and ultimately in your practice, that's what you want to do as well. Okay. So yeah, I've presented this training to other presentations and other conferences, but really anyone can use the model. And so I'm just going to go ahead and share my screen. I did have issues earlier with my internet, so we're just believing that it's going to be just fine. We're going to get through this. Okay. So give me a thumbs up if you can see my screen. Can you see it? Okay. So here it is, and it's going to help people learn how to take their rights back. It's going to help all of us learn how to take our rights back because we even need help too sometimes, right? So first off, this is Kuma. This is wonderful Kuma. And Kuma, the year this was taken, was a sheriff, right? So already, dog lovers, you're like, Olivia's not that bad. I could probably listen to her talk for a few minutes, right? And because this is a full training, there is going to be time at the end for questions. So if you could just write your questions down, but if you would hang on to them until the very end, because I'll go down rabbit holes with you, or I'll take you down some with me, and then we're not going to get through the full training. So just write your questions down, and then just know I will have a portion that we can go ahead and answer questions. So with Kuma, if you're a dog person, he's a Great Pyrenees German Shepherd mix. And this year that he was posing for this, he was the sheriff. So we like to say, don't mess around, you're going to find out from Kuma. So really, you may have already given me more of your trust. We talked about Harry Potter a little bit, right? If you like the rain, if you're an outside person, I like to kayak, dog person. So trust is going to play a role in our training that we're going to use, and you're going to see how in just a second. So the one thing we want to help our clients to understand, but also what we would want to understand maybe, is that you don't need someone to give you your rights. You already have the rights that you need to possess. You already have those in your possession. What we want to learn how to do, and what we want to help our clients understand, is that we need to learn how to exercise our rights. And we know when we come from trauma, We can demand that we get our rights. We can beg someone for our rights, plead for our rights, right? But the reality is we already possess all the rights we need. We just have to learn how to exercise our rights. And that's exactly what the model is going to teach us how to do. And it's going to teach us how to do that by helping us to understand privacy and what privacy is, and then how to use boundaries to protect your privacy. So that's the premise of the entire model, is that we're going to learn how to use different boundaries, which we're going to go through thoroughly, to be able to protect our privacy. So we first have to understand, what is our right to privacy? What does that mean? Okay, so moving right along, let's see here. So what's the purpose of the model? It is trauma informed. So you could use SAMHSA's key principles. There are 6 key principles that we have to implement as we're practicing, right, to make sure that we're being trauma informed. So the model is developed with that in mind. So you can be sure that you're able to align with trauma informed care as you share the model and use the model in your practice. And the other thing is that the model was developed with those of us who come from trauma in mind. Because we know when we have like those trauma responses around relationships and boundaries, it's not pretty, it's not helpful, but the model is going to teach us how to, what would I say, how to sort of harness some of that behavior in a healthy, productive way that helps us to be safe when we're setting and holding boundaries. So it's going to promote safety. And we know with trauma, we want to be talking about safety and talk about it often. The other thing the model is going to help us to learn how to do is how to reconnect to our gut, right? If I'm a little kid and I come home through the door and let's say the house is just destroyed and my dad's gone, so I go to the other adult and say, what happened, right? And I hear, oh, nothing happened. Everything's fine. Go to your room. Every sense within me, my gut's screaming at me, something's wrong, but I'm hearing, you're fine, go to your room, right? How many times do I have to hear that before I slowly start to just dismiss my gut altogether? So the model's going to help, same as we were being told, right? It's going to help us watch for things and learn to listen to our gut and ultimately trust it. So it's going to teach us how to reconnect to our gut. It's going to teach us how to set and hold boundaries in a safe way. It's also going to help us to take our rights back, but not in a demanding, intrusive, or controlling way, but in a safe and healthy way. It's also going to help us learn how to use trust, determine the relationship type, also what is our role in that relationship, and that's going to help us learn where to put the boundary. So just stick with me. We're going to put a neat little bow on it. You can take it home. Okay. So there's a few things we want to understand first before we can jump into the model. So the first one is trust. What is your relationship with trust? And does trust ever get factored in to your relationships? Do you stop and think about how much you trust someone or how much you don't trust someone? Or do you think about, do I even trust you before I go in your car? Do I trust you before we go out to eat or before I tell you my deepest, darkest secret, right? So what is your role with trust? What were you taught about trust? We're going to go through that in just a second. Also, relationships. We have lots of types of relationships. Every single one of us has several interactions with different levels of relationships, and some are on a daily, weekly, monthly, annual. Sometimes you just see a person once, right? That would be a stranger that you only meet one time. So we want to help our clients to understand that we're much better off to have a huge pool that we can place people in or from in different types of relationships. When we have trauma, people tend to be all in or all out by default, right? So if you're all in and you get all of me, then I'm not ready to let you go. By default, where do you stay? You stay just as close and you still get all of me. So we want to teach varying degrees of relationships. And what does that mean? Because if I keep using the trauma model for boundary setting, I tend to have a whole bunch of people who I used to be really close to, but now I just don't talk to them anymore, right? Usually with trauma, we have like that one person in our life, and that's pretty much who we have until something happens, and then they're out, and then we get our next one. So it's really not safe, especially with domestic violence, right? We know one of the best ways for someone to get out and stay out of domestic violence is to have a support system. But if I keep using that trauma boundary model, right, all in or all out, then I don't get to have a support system. So the model is going to teach us how to do that. It's also going to help us understand how to use the boundaries, but for the sake of the model, we're just going to look at 2. That's physical and emotional. And it's clearly going to define what each of those types of boundaries are and then how to use it. And the last one is privacy. right? What does privacy mean? And what happens when privacy is violated? Okay, so going right to the next one, trust. So here we are at the first one, right? So the first thing to know about trust is that it has to be earned. Someone has to earn your trust. You never just give your trust away freely, right? So that's the first thing. It has to be earned. The second one is that trust takes time to build, and broken trust takes time to rebuild. So this summer, I like to use the example. I was extending my fence. Okay, so I had this portion where I had to build a fence. Such a job. I had to decide what type of fence to put in. I had to measure. I had to figure out which types of posts, right? It was so much research. And then I had to do all this meticulously, measure it all. And then I had to figure out the cost. Then I had to budget. I had to wait for the money. I had to measure my car to see if the materials fit, take a day out of my calendar to be able to get the material, bring it home another day to install it, right? Plus I had to borrow a tool. So the whole point is anytime you're building anything really, it takes time, and trust is not any different. So I really like it when a client or my friend or a friend of mine is like, oh, Olivia, I just met the most wonderful person. I feel like I've known him my whole life. Okay, when'd you meet? 2 weeks ago. Okay, you haven't known him your whole life, right? So really being mindful, can I really trust you? I don't know you. So that's the next one. We give very little trust to a stranger. Why? Because we don't know them. We don't know if we can trust them. So there is some trust, but it's very little when it comes to a stranger. But you also don't trust someone just because you know them, right? You may know someone who is incredibly untrustworthy. You would not want to give that person your trust because it's not safe, right? Next one. So who do you trust? You trust those who are trustworthy. That's who you give your trust to, right? So we know has to be earned, takes time to build, give little trust to a stranger. Don't trust someone just because we know them. We trust those who are trustworthy, okay? So the next one is, how do we know who's trustworthy, right? So here's a list of 8 traits of a trustworthy person. And the thing is, this is not set in stone, right? So we want to empower our clients, which is part of the being trauma informed, to decide what helped you trust someone. When is the time where someone has broken your trust? What is a trait that we could pull from that to put in our toolbox to know, oh, when I see that, probably not the best idea to give them all my trust. I might want to back up a bit, right? So this is not set in stone. This is just a starting point. And I always ask clients, is there anything on there that's not that really that big deal to you? Or is there something on there that you really like, right? So we're going to have a conversation about trust and what helps them to trust someone. So the first trait is they are loyal and reliable, right? So that would be to the person. Are they loyal to you? Meaning they don't betray you, right? And then we're going to talk about what is betrayal. And I'm going to let someone tell me what betrayal is to them. For a lot of times, there's often betrayal that takes, place in a home. But because we still have to wake up and be with this person, you can see how we get mixed up on what trust is and what betrayal is. So it's someone who's loyal. Do they not betray you? Are they reliable? That means, can you count on them? If they say they're going to do something for the most part at 6:30, they're there at 6:30 to do whatever it is they said they're going to do. Or do they consistently say they're going to do one thing and not do another? So the next one, leading right into that, their words align with their actions. Do you see them doing what you hear them saying they're going to do? Can you reconcile those two things? Or is it constantly they're saying they didn't do that when you know you watched them do that, right? It's not congruent. I can't give as much trust. I'm going to take a step back. Number 3, you don't catch them lying to other people. Have you ever been standing next to someone while they were just telling the most fantastic story to another person? It was all lie, right? And you're like, what? You're not in the military, right? You don't live over there. Like, why are you lying to this person? And now I feel weird because I'm standing next to you while you're telling this huge lie, and you and I know you're lying, right? But when you see that, that means, oh, I pay attention and I back up and give a bit less trust. Next one, they don't talk bad about other people behind their back and then pretend to be their best friend, right? So if you're watching someone betray another person, right, that would be, okay, probably not going to give you as much trust because I'm seeing that you're not trustworthy, right? You're betraying someone and you're not letting them know that you're betraying them. 5, they do not steal. This can be a tricky one because sometimes in groups we have people, right? Depending on where you practice, where you work. I like to use this in group. I also use it in individual therapy. Use it in my own personal life, right? But if someone's stealing, being mindful, this list, if you look at this list and it kind of bums you out, it's okay. This is a great place to have sort of like a heart check, maybe you could call it, where you're like, okay, yeah, I talk bad about other people. I have taken little things. I haven't been the most reliable, right? So it's kind of like, okay, this is where I kind of want to tighten it up on my side of the street so I can be more of a trustworthy person. So it's all information. So much of this is a lot of information that we can use and also use to set boundaries, right? So with stealing, it doesn't even have to be big things, right? If you see someone kind of on the regular taking things without permission that they have not been given, even small things from work, right? Or if they justify, well, they're not going to miss this. They're a big corporation, or well, they don't pay enough, and so they owe us, right? Those are things that should prick our ear. Oh, okay, probably give this person a bit less trust. Number 6, they show empathy. Empathy is such a wonderful concept, and you could probably have an entire presentation on empathy. The model keeps it very simple. It's someone who grieves when you grieve and they rejoice when you rejoice, right? Sometimes people are just with us in our trauma, but the second we start to climb out of that, they're no longer really connected to us or supporting us, right? Or maybe they're with you when you're on top, but then when you're going through a hard time, where'd they go, right? So someone who is showing you they're with you in the trauma and they celebrate you and your success, right? That's someone who you could give more trust to, right? That's a trustworthy person for you. 7, they feel guilt when they wrong someone else. So really, we're looking for a conscience, right? Are they on the phone and say, hey, you know what? I have to go apologize. I just feel terrible, right? Or do they blame someone for why they treated them poorly, right? That's their problem. They should have thought of that. They shouldn't have been so dumb or so gullible, right? Those are things I want to pay attention to. And I'm going to give less trust if I hear that. The last one, they respect your boundaries. So if you say, no, no, thank you, I don't want to talk about that, I don't want to go there, I don't want to do that, and they maybe ask another question, but then for the most part, right, it's like, hey, no problem, it's done. That's showing you respect for your boundaries. But if someone keeps pushing or manipulating or guilting, or they just won't let it go, right, some of that coercive control that we learn about, any of those type of tactics, that's someone who's not respecting you. That's who you give less of your trust to. So hopefully you're seeing, especially clients who have experienced trauma or domestic violence, abusive relationships, right? Just for ourselves, right? It's kind of like, oh yeah, I'm not even using a list when I develop relationships, right? Maybe some of us have a really strong gut and it just comes second nature. But for those of us who've been separated from our gut, having a list to be mindful of as we have our interpersonal relationships. My neighbor's dog started barking, which might make my bark, so I'm hoping they don't. Sorry if they do. But having a list that's something we can kind of measure and learn is really helpful when we start to learn how to set and hold boundaries. Okay, next one. So we said, for the sake of the model, we're just going to look at 2 boundaries. And the first one is emotional. So the model defines an emotional boundary by the extent to which you emote with someone. So what it means to emote someone, just think of sharing what's in your head and sharing what's in your heart. So the more I tell you about what's in my head and what's in my heart, that's a greater extent to which I'm emoting. So if I'm telling you a lot of what I'm thinking, what I'm feeling, what I'm hoping, past traumas, future hopes, if I'm letting you in my head and my heart, I'm emoting a great deal with you and I'm having very little emotional boundaries. Okay. So hopefully that's making some sense. Oh, keep making sense. If I give you very little of what I'm thinking, I give you very little of what I'm feeling, I don't tell you about my past. I don't talk all about my divorce and all of this other trauma I've had, right? If I don't give you any of that, I'm having very strong emotional boundaries and I'm not emoting to a great extent with you. Okay. So that's what it means to have emotional boundaries. It's just the extent to which you emote. How much of what's in here and what's in here is coming out of your mouth. in a nutshell. Okay, physical boundaries. When we think of physical boundaries in terms of the model, just think in terms of proximity, how physically close someone is to us, as opposed to how physically far away from us. Like right now, the sheriff that you just saw in the beginning, he's laying right by me and my door's way over there. So proximally, Kuma, the dog, is much closer to me than my door, okay? So when we're learning about the model and how to put it all together, when you're thinking in terms of physical boundaries, you're just thinking how physically close someone is to your body as opposed to how physically far away from you. So those are the only two we have to learn to be able to protect our privacy in the model. Okay, next one. So what belongs to self? Here's a sneak peek at the model. Let me see. I can probably just, can you see my mouse? Will you give me a thumbs up if you see it moving? Okay, thanks, Bill. So you can see right here, self is at the very base, and it's the greatest definition maybe of a heart. As you go further out from self, right, it becomes less and less and less of a heart. So self is where we belong, and everything that's in self is private. So we were saying that we were going to learn what is privacy. So everything in self is your thoughts, feelings, fears, worries, dreams, past failures, traumas, disappointments, right? Everything that's in your head, everything that's in your heart and your physical body, all of that makes up your privacy. All of that is your right to protect. Okay? So anytime someone's trying to ask you a question, immediately it's private. You decide if you're going to answer that or not. And that's part of how you're going to exercise your rights and protect your privacy. Okay. So I'm going to stop saying okay. For some reason tonight I'm saying okay a lot. Maybe I need more validation. I don't know. But if we look at this model and we understand, okay, this is self, everything over here belongs to self, everything in self is private, and that includes my physical self. I may amend in my book and talk about your belongings as well, because it's your head, your heart, physical self, and all of your belongings. Sometimes we don't understand that, is what I'm finding as I'm working with people. So keep that in mind and feel free to throw that in when you're working with somebody. Okay, so what causes us to misunderstand privacy? Why would we even have to come here and learn that what's in your head and what's in your heart and your body is yours to protect? How does that happen, right? Well, it's any time someone has experienced a violation of their privacy. That's how we start to misunderstand what truly belongs to us. So I'll give you a couple of examples. Let's say that I'm a kid and I have a diary, and some rotten person, some wonderful rotten person from my family finds my diary and they take it. And now I walk into dinner and they're sitting there reading it to the whole family, right? Huge violation of my privacy. When I get mad over that, because that is a violation and it's a crossing my boundary, anger is a natural response to boundary being crossed, right? When I get mad, then I'm told, don't be that way. Why do you have to act like that? I may even be punished for responding with anger, right, to them violating my privacy. So pretty soon I learned, oh, that's wrong. I don't get mad when my privacy is violated. I don't get to have things that are mine. I don't get to have thoughts that are my own, that's safe for me to put somewhere. See how that can happen, right? Also, any type of abuse. If you were physically abused, that's a violation of your privacy, right? Someone got to access your body in some form when you didn't say it was okay. And that's all types of abuse, right? If someone exposed themselves to you, right, then you're learning, oh, that's not private. That's something that somebody just decides to show. Or if you were forced to expose yourself, right, you don't have control or say over that. So this is why it's really vital. If we do not understand privacy, we are not going to understand boundaries, because we're never going to know where the line lies. But once you understand that all of this is yours to protect and it's all private until you say so, that really starts to make that line more and more clear, right? So violations in privacy is a huge thing. I was so glad I presented this at Utah Valley University, and I heard a professor mention privacy, but it was very brief. But you don't hear about privacy enough, right? So understanding privacy has to be part of the conversation for us to be able to understand boundaries. Because you'll notice if I don't get to grow up with the bedroom door, right? If I have to change with my door open, if I don't ever feel like I could shut the door and have some space, I'm going to feel like anybody gets to access me, whether they're physically abusing me or not. I just never feel like I have a right to anything that's mine. I don't feel like anything is mine. Okay. All right. So that is privacy and what can cause some issues with understanding privacy. Okay. So before we said, it's really helpful if we can learn to have a lot of different categories of relationships of where we can place people, right? I think I used the word pool. I don't know where that came from. I meant categories, I'm sure. So here is the model. And you can see on here, you have self, partner, family, friend, coworker, acquaintance, and stranger. These are a few examples of the many types of relationships we all experience in a lifetime. But for the sake of the model and to show points of reference of sharing, these are the ones that come on the model. So now we're going to learn, what do you share based off the type of relationship that it is. So again, none of this is set in stone. These are all starting points. These are all just little examples of how we could say what's on the table, what's off the table for sharing with these different types of relationships. So the first one, stranger. With the stranger, you want to keep it very surface level, right? I don't want to give very much of what's in here, very much of what's in here. I am not going to emote with the stranger. Why? Because that makes me really vulnerable and I don't know how safe it is because I don't know if I can trust them because I don't know them, right? So surface level, you could be polite. Don't ever have to be nice, but you could be polite, not really giving up anything personal. Keep your interactions brief. And you'll notice this is why if you sit on a bus next to someone, if you've ever done that, you see it all the time, people who are taking flights, you're sitting with a stranger for an extended period of time, and your brain starts to think you know them better than you do. And then you just start spilling your guts, or they start spilling their guts to you, right? So being mindful with strangers, we tend to keep our interactions brief, but we'll talk about how you still hold boundaries with a stranger when you have to be next to him for an extended period of time. You also want to share based off your 5 senses. So your 5 senses, taste, touch, sight, smell, sound, right? If you keep your sharing with the stranger to your 5 senses, we know from mindfulness, right? That's going to keep you in the present. And if I'm in the present and sharing in the present, what am I not doing? I'm not telling someone all about my divorce in Winco when they ask me about apples, right? If I just share in the present, that's going to prevent me from just having, my mouth come out and give all my business away. And then I have to go home and hate myself for the next 2 weeks, right? Anybody else ever done something like that? And then it's like, and when we have trauma, we try to show that we're honest sometimes by how much we divulge, right? I had someone tell me once, if I hurry and say everything that happened to me, I have a better chance of someone sticking around, right? But we know that if we were to chart that, that would not be true, right? But trauma can really mess stuff up for us when it comes to how much we share and how we're trying to bond and connect. Okay, so here's an example of someone who is sharing based off their 5 senses with a stranger. These bananas look ripe and it sure is cold in here. Not top secret information, right? And I'm saying they look right and it feels cold in here, right? So that's how we could share safely with the stranger. Acquaintance, nothing deep, keep it surface level, but you can share common interest, right? This really helps someone who is learning how to date safe, right? When we learn how to date safe, we understand this is an acquaintance, so we can talk about common interests, but I'm not going to talk about past traumas. I'm not going into any of my issues. So an example could be, I enjoy kayaking and hiking. How about you? Right? I'm looking to see, do we value any of the same things? That's okay with an acquaintance because we're trying to see, are we going to move further in any type of relationship with this other person? So it's okay to ask about what they like to do and their interests. But again, I'm not going to tell you a whole big old story why hiking is important to me, or all the, go on and on about kayaking and what happened to me when I was 5, right? I'm just keeping it to the present. I like to kayak and hike. How about you? Until trust has time to be built. Coworker, you can share some interests. It will be work related. So your thoughts, your hopes, they're work related. So you could say something, let me move my screen. I think it says, I sure hope we get a Christmas bonus this year, right? So I am sharing a hope, but it's work related. That's if someone has built the level of trust to be in the coworker level, which we're going to talk about in just a second. So over time, you can share more on a friend level with the coworker if they've built trust to that level. And we're going to see how that works in just a second. Next one, friend. So you can share more private thoughts with friends, hopes, fears, thoughts, but we have to remember, this is very big in working with someone with trauma, is that not all friends are created equal, right? I'm also going to have varying degrees and levels of friends within my friend rung. I may have a friend who's my concert friend. I might have my trauma friend who I can share and emote with. I may have a friend who is my book friend, right? We may have a friend that is a hiking friend. So if I have a friend who I emote with, I'm not going to call my concert friend when I need some emotional support, right? Sometimes we're reaching out to the wrong friend and then we're like, every time I'm there, every time. And now I need help from you. And where'd you go? Right? Piece of garbage. But instead it's realizing, oh, okay, this is not a friend that emotes with me to that degree. I need to call the friend who can do that with me. And that just frees me to love my concert friend. And that's the type of relationship that we have. So we really have to understand this if we're going to be able to have all these varying degrees of friendships that we can keep in our support system, right? Instead of the all in, all out. Well, now I needed help. You didn't do it the way I needed you to. Therefore, now you're nothing and you're out, right? Instead, it's, oh, I should have known. That's the one who I go to concerts with. Let me call my emotional friend, and then I'll go with her to a concert. So not all friends are created equal. You're going to share different at different levels with different friends. Family, different with different family members as well. Not all family members are created equal, right? You may have some family members who have consistently betrayed you, right? But then you could have someone in your family who has consistently shown you that they're loyal, shown you that they're reliable, shown you that you could count on them. That's the one you would emote with more, and you would emote less with the one who has consistently betrayed you, or the one who tells everybody's business, right? I'm not going to go to the person that's sharing everyone's business and give all my business to that person. I'm going to be mindful and realize, okay, I'm just going to have to see that person at the picnic. But when I want to talk to a family member, this is the one I trust. This is the one I go to. No more of the all in, all out, right? You don't have to share at all with family. Your business is not automatically your family's business. You still have a right to privacy, even with family, right? There's a lot of families that really like to overstep that boundary and demand that you answer questions or give up that personal private information, and you don't have to. And the model is going to show you how to not in just a second. Okay, partner. So partner gets more of self than all other relationships. If we go back to the model, we can see that partner is closest to self, right? So partner gets most of self. You can protect your partnership by learning how to hold boundaries. So no one goes in partner rung but partner, right? So if you have an in-law trying to get in there with you, it's going to break it. Can't have it. A child cannot go in there. A friend cannot go in there. No one goes in partner but partner. So you would have to be able to differentiate, how am I giving my partner more than all other relationships so I can protect that relationship and really foster it and help it to be as strong and as a bond as it could be, right? So you protect your partnership by holding those boundaries. Sorry, I'm going to move this for just a second. Okay, that's worth mentioning. So if you don't have a partner, it's very common to experience loneliness. Why? Because you're not emoting to that level, that close level, like you would with a partner when you're outside of the relationship, right? So for single clients, and for us who are single, it's good to learn to journal, right? Write about your thoughts. Anything that you would share with a partner emotionally, that's what you can put in a notebook. And that does help you to feel less lonely. Okay, so moving on to the next one, levels of sharing based on our role. This is a huge one. Your role, when you factor your role into the type of relationship you have, that's what keeps your sharing appropriate. So it's always good to ask yourself, what is my role in this relationship? And we're going to go through a bunch of examples so you can really see this play out in just a second. So that's what's going to help you keep it appropriate. And we're going to factor that into where we set the emotional boundary. So don't worry, all this is going to make sense in just a second. All right, so how to use the model. So we want to use the emotional boundary and the physical boundary when we're deciding how much we're going to share with someone. So the emotional boundary is based off the amount of trust that's been earned and our role in the relationship. So that means how much I give up of what's in here and what's in here is based off how much I trust them and my role in that relationship. The physical boundary, how physically close someone gets to be to me, is going to be determined most often by the type of relationship. So you want to always identify what type of relationship is it, and then I'm going to share this and this based off the emotional boundary. The other, I guess, rule, for lack of a better word, is you always emote out from self. So self gets most, self gets everything, and then it's partner, and then it's family. So I'm going to meet people in the rung that they're at. No one goes in self but me, and we're going to see why that is critical in just a second. So self contains everything, and you're the boss. You're deciding what you're going to give emoting out. All right. Okay, we'll go next one. So let me give you an example. Let's say I'm a person who just started a new job. Okay, so I just started a new job. So really, everyone's starting at coworker in my brain, right? Especially if I just left a job that was really safe and I really could trust the people that worked there. Maybe some of them became like friends and like family to me, right? When I walk into a new place of employment, my brain automatically puts people right here, which you can see self is closer to coworker than stranger. But the reality is, if I don't know anyone who works there, everyone needs to start at stranger because I don't know them. I don't know if I can trust them. So here's where the beauty of having those two boundaries really helps actually live out life, right? Because physically, they will be as close to me as the coworker because we're all in the same building, right? But I hold my boundary, protect my right to privacy, exercise my rights by emotionally only sharing to the extent I would with a stranger for the first few days. I'm going to spend most of my time asking just basic questions about work and watching. And then I'm watching for those traits. Can I trust you, right? Do I see you being kind to people? Do I see you being honest? Do I just hear you constantly gossiping? Do I see you take stuff that maybe I don't think you're supposed to be taking, right? I'm watching to see who's going to be trustworthy and see who's going to move through my model. So as someone earns trust over time, let's say I work with Mike, and every day Mike helps people. I don't see him talk bad about other people. I've never seen him like flip out on anybody. He doesn't steal stuff, right? So over time, Mike is going to go from stranger to acquaintance, right? And so that means now I'm giving self at an acquaintance level, may be able to talk about shared interests. Once he goes into coworker, I can start to tell him how I feel about work on top of just talking about work. He may build trust up to become a friend, and this would not be inappropriate. In fact, lots of adults, our friends come from work, right? So if, as long as trust has been built to this level, it's not unhealthy. They may even work into the family rung. With me, I've been at my place of position 13 or 14 years now, and everyone there has worked there at least 10 years, and we are all truly like family. They have built, and I've built enough trust with all of us through the years, not betraying each other, having each other's back, being reliable. Someone's sick, we're right there to take care of it, right? We can trust each other, we're loyal, we can rely. It's been shown over and over. So now they're in that family rung. And eventually someone could move to partner, and that really depends on your place of work's rules. But really, before dating apps and things like that, I have to check the latest research. But years ago, the number one place most spouses met was at work, which, if you look at the model, it makes sense, right? Because if someone is starting to build your trust and build your trust and build your trust, it's not that far of a leap to believe they could land there. So as trust is earned, someone moves through the model. And here's the beautiful part where we can get away from the trauma boundary model of all in, all out. As trust is broken, someone can move further up our model. So we don't have to put them completely out. So let's say, just really quickly, if I have someone who is a coworker that I thought I could trust, but then they kind of did something shady, and I'm like, I don't know if you did that on purpose, right? Is this who you are and I miscalculated that? Or Were you just being human and, you had a moment, right? So until I can kind of figure that out, I'm just going to back up emotionally, maybe only share at an acquaintance level, stop saying most of my feelings about work, only share about work, but not how I feel about work, right? Put them in the acquaintance level and just watch. And over time, they could earn my trust back and move back through the model. Or if they never earn it back, they'll stay there. If it gets broken more, I can put them out to stranger, meaning I'm going to try to be around them as least I can. And of course, this is after I've tried to resolve the issue, right? So I can try to be around them as the least amount that I can. And I'm definitely not telling them anything that I'm thinking or feeling. That's my own private stuff, right? So be mindful, because our brain wants to just stick people right there, just right out the gate. But really, everyone starts here, and trust has to be earned. Remember, it's a process. Okay, so let's look at a few issues. Oh, let me jump back for just a second. The other thing to understand about the model is that everyone's going to have their own model. So I have my own model. Each of you have your own model. And this is where role plays such a vital key. So think of a therapist, okay? So if I'm a therapist and I'm working with the client, I have my model, my client has their model. We may not always be in the same places in each other's model, and it's your role that's going to prevent you from doing that, but that's what keeps it appropriate. So if I'm working with the client, my job is to be reliable. My job is to be transparent. My job is to empower, to listen, all those types of things. That is not my client's role in that working relationship, but that is my role. See how that works? So I'm to be that for them, but they're not required to be that for me. In fact, it probably wouldn't be appropriate if I'm trying to rely on them, right? So in their model, I may be building trust with them, and to them, they may place me here. They may share with me even at this level at times, right? Not meaning that I'm there constantly, but the amount of information they're allowing me to have access to, which is why we have governing bodies that protect the licensures and hold us accountable. And we have to take ethics, right? To be able to make sure that we're staying in alignment with our role in the relationship. So in my client's role, they may have me further down with the amount that they're emoting with me, but in my model, they are probably more at coworker or acquaintance, right? So if anything, it would be the shared relationship, which is that working relationship. And in that relationship, they are the job. And so what we talk about is them. See how that works? That's how my role gets factored in. So I'm not talking about my family. I'm not sharing any of this stuff emotionally down here. My own private life, thoughts, hopes, dreams, all my past, all my stuff, right? None of that's coming out in session because my role's going to keep it up here. See how that works? So you could have different placements in different people's roles or different models. Okay, let's take a look at an affair. So let's say that I have a job and I have a coworker who has built enough trust, and I'm married. Okay, so let's say I'm married and my coworker has built trust, built trust, built trust. And eventually I find myself emoting with them at the same level I do my partner. I'm sharing just as much of what's in here and just as much of what's in here with my coworker. I'm not really sharing any more or less with my partner than my coworker. That's what we would call an emotional affair, right? So to protect my partnership, to make it solid, I'm going to have to stop sharing at that level with my coworker. I could still share at a familial level, maybe. But if I'm trying to strengthen my boundaries, I may bump him out to friend or put him back in coworker, actually, just to kind of get myself straightened back out until I can learn, okay, I don't share this, but I can share this. This is on the table, this is off the table, because that's reserved for partner, right? If I allow someone to go in here physically, right, when I have a partnership and that's not agreed upon, then that's an affair that most of us think about having a physical affair. Not that you think about having a physical affair. I just mean when we hear the word affair, that's what we think about, right? Physically. But emotionally means we're emoting at that same level. Parentification. If I have a child, and let's say I build so much trust with this child, they have built so much trust with me, right? We're like bosom buddies. Through thick and thin, we have been through it. Eventually, I could find myself sharing with my child at a partner level. meaning I'm sharing emotionally as much with my child as I would with my partner, right? That would be parentification. I'm parentifying my child. Not good, right? We know lots of stuff comes from that, and usually codependency. They're thinking that everyone's problem is their problem to solve. We're teaching them they're more, responsible for our lives than they have. They can't save us from a bad marriage. They can't fix our finances. They can't help us with the mean boss, right? Any of those things that we'd be sharing with the child would have to factor that role in. My role in the relationship is parent. I'd have to put my child back up in here in family, right? And stop emoting and sharing at that degree or to that extent. Okay, so that was parentification. Because the problem is when we do that, we emotionally abandon the child because I'm there for me emotionally. My child's there for me emotionally. No one's there for the child, right? And that teaches them to not be there for themselves and to have those types of relationships. So not good. Codependency. If I'm struggling with codependency, I want to live right here. And remember, no one goes in self but you. So I want to get right in yourself. I want to know every single thought you're thinking, every single dream you're dreaming, right? I want to know every single past trauma. I also want to know everything your eyes saw that day, every single person you talked to. I want to know every text you sent, right? When we look at codependency, it's demanding, intrusive, controlling, jealous, right? Also, I just gave you an outline of common traits of someone who's a perpetrator of domestic violence. If you work in domestic violence, you're going to see a lot of codependent traits. And someone who's perpetrating domestic violence, what do they want? Right there, I want all your emails, all your texts. I want to know all your conversations. I want to control what you put on your body, what shirt you wear, where you work, who you talk to, which family you get to talk to, right? So anyone who's trying to go in there in that self rung, that is not okay. No one goes in self but you. And I know sometimes we call that love, right? And especially if we have a lot of shame, we have that oceanic, all consuming love in the beginning, which is so wonderful and toxic and bad for us, right? But that's usually what's happening is we're both trying to exist in each other's self rung. So we have to be mindful. No, I have a special place. No one demands access of my head and my heart. Nobody gets to demand access to my body. That's all off limits. So I know if you're doing that, that's not romantic. That's not you showing me love. That's you crossing boundaries and you need to back up. Okay, dating. When we start dating and we have a potential partner, just like coworker, our brains tends to stick them in partner, right? So we send a couple texts back and forth or however any of that stuff works. And now I'm sitting in front of you in Starbucks and I'm telling you all my business. I'm telling you all just as though you had earned enough trust to be partner, right? I'm sharing at that same degree with partner or as I would with a partner. Oh, sorry, I don't want a pen. I want a highlighter. Okay. Same level as I would partner. Sorry, that's not working. Okay. I'm just gonna let it go. Which is not safe, right? Because I don't know you. I don't know if I can trust you. I'm letting you in way too close before trust has been built. By the way, when we go slow and give time for trust to be built, when there is an offense or a violation of some kind that occurs, we're much more likely to have a level of understanding and to be able to work through it than if we let someone in super fast. Because we let someone in super fast and we're super vulnerable and raw and we haven't built enough trust, then when an offense occurs, it's devastating, right? So that's another reason why we can go slow and let that trust have a chance to develop. Okay, so we have to be really mindful. Your potential partner right now, truly you're closer to acquaintance or stranger, depending how much interactions we've had. We've talked a couple times. Hopefully we're doing that before we go on a date. Then you're probably going in that acquaintance rung. And remember, we talk about shared interests. What are some of your values? No traumas, no future plans, right? I'm not going to leave Starbucks with both of us talking about how we're going to remodel my basement next summer, right? They don't even need to know I have a basement at that point. I don't know them. I'm not going to share that, right? Okay, professionals. So for us, we covered that. That was where we said they could have their model, but then we're also going to have our model, right? And it keeps professional by factoring in our role. Okay, so make the model your own. This is one of the best parts, right? We want to teach our clients and we ourselves, for you, anyone watching this, right? Make it your own. So if there's a relationship that's not represented on the model, draw it in there. So you can add a level, you can draw in a whole new level, or decide what's on and off the table for that category. So let me give you an example. Let's say I'm a teacher. If I'm a teacher, a significant group in a relationship type that I'm going to have for a long time, hopefully, right, are students. Students is not represented on here. So then I got to decide, okay, and if you have a client who's struggling with boundaries and it's not on here, the relationship type, then we're going to say, well, where do you feel that goes? Which students would you share with students like you would a coworker, or would they be closer to acquaintance? Well, I think it would be in between acquaintance and coworker. Then we're going to say, okay, let's draw a rung there and we're going to write students. If they say, no, I want to share just like I would an acquaintance, we would just do a backslash, write students there. And then we're going to define it. What is on the table? What is off the table for sharing with students, right? So if it's a student, then I want it to be about teaching and about the student, okay? So everything I share is going to be about the student, or it's going to be about teaching. Everything else is off the table for me, right? And so this is where we're practicing holding our boundaries. So nothing set in stone. In fact, make it your own. The only thing I always recommend, always keep self, partner, acquaintance, and stranger. If you will keep these four in their spheres, that's going to help give you a point of reference for sharing. You'll always have something to measure your new rung against. Does that make sense? Whereas if you wiped it all out, you really don't have a point of reference for sharing. So self, partner, acquaintance, stranger, because you're always going to have strangers if you're in the world, right? You're going to have people who are a little more than a stranger. You may have a partner, you may not, but you're always going to have you. So that's why those four always go there. So you can be sure your sharing is appropriate. Okay. So when trust is broken, we're going to go through an example of how to reconnect you to your gut when your trust is broken. So if I'm working with the client, we've already ran through the model. We've talked about privacy, trust, the emotional boundary, the physical boundary, and the different types of relationships. Then let's say I have a client who had a sister betray her, and now it's Thanksgiving, right? So now she has to go home at Thanksgiving and sit next to her sister who betrayed her. So we would say, okay, so your sister's family, physically, she's going to be as close as family. That's a given, right? Or in this scenario, it will be. And then also, based off the amount of trust that was broken, where would you place your sister? And for this person, they said acquaintance. Perfect. Let's stick her in acquaintance. Then we're going to talk about what's on the table, what's off the table. Well, I'll talk about mom and the issues mom's having. I don't want to talk about anything in my personal life. And we say, okay, well, that's the goal we're going to set. You're going to go to Thanksgiving. You can still be polite, right? You don't have to have her account and answer for everything she's ever done. You don't have to try to recruit people to be on your team. You don't have to freak out and leave. And you also don't have to not go. You can still go, be around your sister, right? Enjoy the rest of your time, but you're going to exercise your rights by protecting your privacy through the use of your emotional boundary in this case, which is I'm not giving much of here or much of here, only at an acquaintance level. We're only talking about mom. Okay. So then when she comes back, I'm going to check back in with her, right? Let's say she's in group. Then I'm going to say, oh, okay. So how did it go? Right. And she can be like, oh, I hate myself. I always cave in, right? Because that's what happens when we get around family and we're trying to have boundaries. So we're going to take it back to the model. Okay. So when you came, then we thought, all right, we're going to stick her in acquaintance. And what happened, right? She's going to say, well, she asked me a question. I gave her a very surface answer. She asked me again, surface answer. And she asked me again, but she got a bit angry with me. And then I just talked to her for 2 hours. That was not the goal, right? But we're going to use that. We're going to use all of that information. So it's okay, that was your boundary. And we already know because you felt her getting upset with you, that's what caused you to remove that boundary. And then you let her, based off what you shared, where would you say you placed her? Partner, right? I gave her everything. So it's like, okay, was there ever a moment where you knew that you would be better off not talking? Or did something like prick your ear? Yeah. When she asked me the second time, I had the thought, wait, you already asked me this and I answered. Okay, well, that's your gut, right? That moment where you had the thought, you already asked me this and I answered. Why asking me again? That's your gut. So it's important to help our clients to identify those moments, right? Actually, you did know, and that was your gut. But the second piece is now how are we going to learn to act on it? So then we're going to say, at what point could you maybe have removed yourself? So physically, we would distance ourselves from sister to help us hold that emotional boundary, right? What could you have done? And we're going to role play. We're going to explore it, right? I could have gone to the bathroom and then just left and got mashed potatoes. I could have said, I'm really sorry, but I got to go. I could have made an excuse. I had to pick someone up. Or I could have just said, I'm not feeling well and left, right? And then we're going to role play that moment. I'm going to be the sister. She's going to be her. If she can't work through it, then I'm going to be her. She's going to be her sister. And all of this is helping clients to understand vocabulary and also giving them skills and tools to be able to protect themselves in a safe and healthy way, right? We're not going to scream and freak out and try to fight our sister, or we're not just going to cry or try to involve another person and make a mess at Thanksgiving, right? So that's how we can use the model and help someone learn to reconnect to their gut. So if you have clients who struggle with intimacy, so let's say that I have a client who's really struggling in their marriage and they know it's them that can't open up, right? So then we would say, okay, so where is your spouse? Where would you like your spouse to go? Well, I want them to go and partner, right? Okay, so based off how much you tell them of what's in here and what's in here, where would you say they're on the model? They're an acquaintance. I don't share much. Okay, so then we're going to give homework that aligns with them sharing more of what's in here and what's in here, if it's safe and if that's their goal, right? That's part of that trauma informed. You let them always be the guide. They're in charge. They're the driver, right? So we could do something like every day, write down 3 things you're thinking and 3 things you're feeling, and pick one of those from your list and share it with your partner. Because when we do that, what are we doing? We're saying what's in here and what's in here. We're emoting more, which is taking down that emotional boundary so that they're letting their partner get closer and closer and closer, right? Until it's just like second hand, whatever you want to say. Okay. For professionals, this can be a caveat or an exception. If you go to a specialist, if you go to a therapist, right? If you walk in and we do a biopsychosocial and it's your very first time meeting us, that is a stranger who's accessing that part of you without having time for trust to be built, right? And it's an expectation, it's a societal expectation that you're going to go in and basically spill your guts, right? But we want to teach clients, you always have a right to privacy, even with professionals. If you are ever in a doctor's office, a dentist's office, a therapist's office, it does not matter which office on the planet you're in, you always have a right to privacy. You always have the right to say, hey, I wasn't prepared to answer that, or I wasn't prepared for these types of questions. I'm going to have to go and I'll call back if I feel like rescheduling, if I want to, right? Or I wasn't prepared for that type of an examination. I'm going to have to do more research and I'll call and reschedule it if I decide to go this route. Thank you for your time. We're going to give them examples and vocabulary of what they can say. Because when we come from trauma, anytime we get around authority, we can feel very small, very helpless, right? Very at the mercy. But we want to pay attention. Pay attention to how you felt from the time you made the phone call. How did it feel for you walking in the door? From when you went into the office, from when you sat down, when they walked into the room. We're paying attention, right? Because we're teaching. Your gut is actually talking to you all the time. And if you ever don't feel good, these are the things you can say. Not prepared today. Sorry, didn't realize this was what I was signing up for. I'm going to need to go, right? So we want to really empower them to use their voice in a healthy, safe way, learning how to protect the right to privacy. Doesn't matter. Even a professional has to ask to access your head and your heart and your body. You always get to say how much you're going to share of that. Okay, so this is Becky's example. We're almost done. This is the last thing. If you're like, Olivia, my ears, I know, I hear you. This is the last example I'm going to show you. Here's Becky. Becky has mapped out her relationships to show and give points of reference for her sharing. So she has a brother named Ralph, and she trusts him. So Ralph goes in family. That's appropriate. Sarah is a sister who broke trust, but she's working towards rebuilding it. So Sarah would normally go in family, but she has her in coworker, not further out because Sarah's working towards rebuilding trust. So she's here. So she'll share about common things and about how she feels about common things, but she's not giving up much personal information outside of common things. Okay, Mike's a boss I'm not sure I trust yet. So Mike's an acquaintance, even though physically she can still go to work and be around Mike. She's going to hold her boundaries, protect her right to privacy, exercise her rights by only emoting, only sharing what's in here and here at an acquaintance level. Jake, partner that I trust. So Jake is in partner. It's where he's supposed to go. And then Sue is a friend that I trust. So Sue gets to go in friend. Here's one other thing. Sorry, I lied. I said that was the last one. It's not. I want to show really quick with co-parenting. That's a common one. We'll just use this. Okay, so let's say I have someone who's really struggling with co-parenting. I had someone ask me this at a conference. What do you do with the co-parent? You use the model exactly like you would use it any other time. So first of all, what type of relationship is it? It's a co-parent. We may need to add a rung if you can't physically decide where to place them. So let's say I decide coworker because everybody's different. Every relationship's different. Some co-working parents, is that a word, co-working? I think so. Co-parenting, that's what I meant to say. Some co-parenting couples have lots of trust. They can still do Thanksgiving, Sunday dinner. They have no problems in that regard. They're still very close, right? So it would be appropriate to put that person in family if the level of trust has been maintained for family. That's okay. But if someone has broken your trust, you could put that co-parent in coworker. But you can see that's still giving them some trust. So if I have a co-parent who's in coworker, then our shared job is the child. So I will tell you about the child, and I can also tell you how I feel about the child if I have you in that rung. But let's say you've broken more trust with me and I have to pop you out into acquaintance. Well, then I'll tell you about the child, but I'm not going to tell you how I feel about the child. See how I hold that boundary? I'm not being vulnerable with you at all with my private thoughts. So I could tell you, Lucy has a dentist appointment on this day at this time. That's it. But if you've built more trust, I may say, hey, I found a dentist. I really like him. Lucy has an appointment. I'm going to let you know how it goes. And I'm going to call and say, hey, I really like this person. They're really kind, right? These are the things that are going on. I'm feeling like she needs this. What do you think, right? I'm going to tell you how I'm feeling and let you in a bit more to my thoughts and feelings, right? No one has a right to demand information from your head and heart. You decide if you share that. So that's an example of coworker, which I know can be a tricky one, but you use it just like you use it any other time. Okay, so these are, I'll just show these really quickly. This is to get the book off of Amazon. It's just my first and last name, the Relationship Trust Boundary Model. And then this is also for a companion guide. This companion guide, I usually mark it way down. It's on my website, but it just has all the key parts that we talked about just in one quick pamphlet that I usually just keep on my desk. And then if you ever want me to do a presentation, you can email me and I'll work it out. I do trainings for staff members, other types of speaking engagements, anything like that. If you're ever like, oh, this group would be really great. There's really no group where the model doesn't fit. So just let me know. And I'm going to stop sharing this. And then anybody have any questions? Are your ears just totally bleeding? It's a lot, but hopefully, yeah, go for
Olivia,
it.
I just wanted to say thank you, and I just really enjoyed that. So thank you for putting this on. It's so great to have another tool. Thank you.
Yeah,
Well,
you bet.
these are important in relationships, and obviously in relationships we have two different systems, and it sounds like it's pretty unlikely that I and this other person, client or acquaintance or whatever, are going to be at the same level. And are there ways to negotiate the right level when their perception of the relationship is different from mine?
Oh, such a good question. Yes. Okay. So I think I'm hearing you right. So sometimes we get really hurt. Let's say I have a friend, and to me, they're family. So I'm putting my friend in family. I'm emoting at that level. I want to be around them like family, but they have me an acquaintance, and I can feel that. And I'm like, I keep trying to love them. I keep trying to hang out with them. I keep trying to share and do all this stuff. And they're like feeling a bit cold. I have to be mindful. Okay, I keep getting hurt, not because they're a piece of garbage, but because I got them here, they got me here. So I'm going to meet them here and realize maybe they need more time for trust. So I'm just going to slow my roll, be a bit more patient, and I'm going to also share at acquaintance until I feel them letting me in more, and then I'm going to follow them there. So that's one way. So great, great thing to bring up. Yes. But also, if someone keeps trying to get deeper into your model and it's not appropriate, like you brought up being a therapist, it's not appropriate, you can try to use that in therapy. So if they keep asking really personal questions, it's like, well, that's not something I normally talk about, but we can talk about why is that important for you? Or let me ask you, right? So I'm probably just going to reframe it and take it back to them and go back to this shared relationship and implement my role, which is therapist. Right. So even if they want to go further in my model, I'm going to prevent that because that's not my role in the relationship. So good question. Yes. Any other questions? Anybody?
Question, because essentially when there's discomfort in those role definitions, mostly a good thought is to say, we need more time. We need to share more information at this level before we can progress. And again, just kind of being more transparent about it rather than not saying anything or or I don't know, just being cold and unaccepting or whatever.
Yes. Oh, I love that. And saying that we need more time. I need more time. That's perfect. And I think that's a great thing to teach people too. If you're teaching them the model and how to use the model, learn to ask for time, especially if they've experienced a betrayal, right? It's okay to ask for time. You're not just going to automatically jump right into trusting again because trust takes time to build. Broken trust takes time to rebuild, right? So sometimes that happens like with affairs and things. So yes, great insight. Yeah.
Just curious what your thoughts are when someone like overshares and tries to get to yourself, and how to like, I don't know, put up the boundaries, how to communicate it.
Yes. Oh man. So really, that's another thing. And I was thinking of this when Bill asked too. So if someone, let's just say a narcissist, okay, they're really good at pretending like they're sharing here, but they're really not because it's so natural. You want to meet people. And this is why we can struggle with therapy sometimes. It's a natural urge to want to meet people at the level they share at. So you go deep, I naturally want to go deep with you. And I feel like narcissists are really going to know that, but they're not. And now you're super vulnerable and they're going to get you, right? Also, detectives use that. They use cognitive empathy. It's not real. They're not really going there, but they're taking you there because of making you believe they're going there. But if someone is having poor boundaries, and you'll know that because they're trying to ask you stuff way too quick, right? Or way too much. You feel like you're just getting information sucked from you. Then just like the example with the sister at Thanksgiving, then I'm going to repeat my answer. Usually I just turn into Ricky repeat, right? So I'm just going to repeat my initial answer. And if they keep digging, then I may say something like what Bill said. Hey, I would need more time with you to know if I could talk about that. Sometimes that can feel really uncomfortable. So I may just say like, yeah, I'm not sure what you're looking for, but that's what I have right now. But if they keep, that's where you throw in the physical boundary and you physically distance yourself.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, yeah, but so if they're not asking you questions, but they're sharing like stuff about their lives, they're not trying to get at yeah, maybe that's a better way to frame it. They're not trying to get at yourself. They're trying to share their self without your consent or without the appropriate time to develop that trust. How do you manage that?
Right. So it would be similar. I would probably try to distance myself. I would probably, engage for a minute or just say like, oh, that sounds hard. I would just be empathetic, but then I would probably just go somewhere else. So it really depends on the relationship, how long I've known them. Is this a stranger doing this? Right. Or is it someone that always just kind of like bleeds all over me or trauma dumps on me, right? Then I may say like, hey, I would rather talk about these things. I would rather talk about hiking. I would rather talk about kayaking, or I'd rather talk about this. So I'm putting it in the appropriate level. Or if I understand they don't have the skills, because we know trauma, that's what gets us to just dump on people, right? Because we don't understand these levels of sharing and that we need to trust, because sometimes they're just trying to get you to stay close and to bond to them by giving you all of that, right? So just sort of, it depends, but sometimes you have to physically remove yourself, but it's okay to voice, hey, I don't really want to talk about this, but I do want to talk about this. And that's how you can kind of move them up. So good question. These are the issues we face in relationships. This is what makes it so hard, right? So hard. Good question.
Yeah, thank you for your answer. That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, you bet. That's why it's so helpful, because especially if you're struggling with someone at work, you can't just not work, right? So how can you be at work and still exercise your right to hold your boundaries? It's usually by that you use the emotional boundary, which means you emote less, right? You give less of what's in here and what's in here, which isn't piggybacking off what you're saying, Laura. But my point in that is you could also use the reverse, where you use the physical boundary to distance yourself. So it's so nice to be able to have both sets of boundaries so you can decide what you're going to use in that situation to help you. Because yeah, if you don't want all of this information, or maybe it's like triggering you and you're just like, I honestly just cannot right now, it's okay to voice that too and say, hey, I don't want to talk about this. I'm sorry. I'm not the person for this, or I can't do this right now, but I will talk about this. So yeah, great question.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. Any other questions? Are you guys freaked out? Are you excited for your boundaries? You're like, all this is going on all the time? No. Gary.
Oh, I was just going to say that there's so much that I loved in what you presented. It gave me a new appreciation for small talk, like there's that. I think also like it gave me a little bit of a creepy vibe now to those things that they say, like ask these 50 questions and any stranger can fall in love with any other stranger. Like, have you seen that, where it's like
Yes.
you just jump to that intimacy and right? So anyway, just thinking about that, I also really liked a lot of the language that you used around trusting your gut. And I'm thinking about our clients that, like, for BPD, for example, borderline, right? Like, there's that invalidating environment that they've learned not to trust themselves. And then you talk about all in versus all out, and how much that maps onto PTSD and how similar those presentations are. So it can kind of give some empathy for like people who don't know themselves and they don't know how to exercise boundaries, and they're all in or they're all out. It had some really nice elements of like systems theory, right? Like so many great, like a synthesis of so many tools that we know in such a easy to implement model. So thanks, Olivia.
Yes, thank you. I love that. When I hear feedback, I'm like, okay, you guys get it. You get it. You get what I was trying to show you. And yeah, for sure, because we do those 50 questions, what are they doing? They're getting right here, and you will bond with them because you're letting them in. You're letting them super quick. And the problem is that you don't know them. I mean, what if they're like terrible? Right? What if you can't trust them? And by then you're bonded. And so good luck, right? Because by the time you let someone in and you bond to them, you can't let them go. If you have the all in, all out, well, I can't let you go. So by default, where do you stay? All in. Still get all access to me. More trauma, more re-victimization. Instead of understanding, no, doesn't matter. When there is a betrayal, and whoever it is, they have to go out until you can breathe and heal, and then trust gets rebuilt. I had someone ask me, I shared it in a women's group, and she said, well, I had people who betrayed me. We've started to like hang out again, but how do I make myself trust them again? Right? And I think that's very common. We think it's our job to make them, or it's our job to make ourselves trust them. But the rule is, once you pop someone out because of a betrayal, it's their job, and also yours, to be open to a degree, right? It's their job to work back through the model. And if they never do, then they never get back in. That's how it works. Someone who is truly sorry, truly wants to reconcile and do the work, they are going to do the work to earn the trust, and that's what makes them safe for you. Someone who can burn you and then just want to come right back without doing the work, that is not safe for you. It's not safe for you. More trauma, more re-victimization, right? So if they don't do the work, then they stay in whatever rung they get placed in. But I like to say, I leave them there just in case they decide to. That's fine with me if I choose that. Some betrayals are so great. It's like, you know what? It's been too many times over an extended period of time. I just can't. So they're going to go permanently in stranger. I think that's less common, but that can happen with specific people in our lives that just for my own safety and for that level that I need from you, you got to go in stranger, which means I'm not around strangers. I don't talk to strangers, right? If I do, it's a single interaction and then that's it. I never see them again. So some people can earn the right to get placed there. And that's where they stay until trust is rebuilt if I decide to let them in. Because sometimes you're right, Laura, it does feel like you got to put that boundary up when you have someone who is like determined to get in there, right? And no, I had a client tell me once, not a client, my friend. Okay, so my friend got a DUI. Then she started a new job. And she said, okay, Olivia, at what point do I have to tell everyone that I got a DUI? And I was like, at no point. At no point. That's your right to privacy. That's your personal information. You might have to tell like HR, or if you're driving or hold a license or something, but it's nobody's business, right? It's your right to privacy. But this person, knowing the history, and she allows me to share this story. When she was growing up, if someone asked you a question and you didn't just give all the information at once, by default, you were a liar. Okay. And if you're a liar, you're a piece of garbage. Worst thing you can be in that family is a piece of garbage, because anyone can treat you any way they want. So she learned that if someone asks her a question, it's her job to stand there and pretty much talk until they're done listening to it. Right. So we can kind of see this is our history with relationship, with trust, with privacy. And this is how it gets messed up. So that now we're an adult, we go to a job and think we got to tell everybody we got a DUI because we don't want to be a liar. No, having privacy is not the same as like secrets, right? It's not the same as being shady. But if you grow up being taught that having privacy makes you shady and untrustworthy, then that's a whole nother conversation. So really understanding, it doesn't matter. You have a right to privacy. Just because someone asks never means you have to answer. You decide what answer you're going to give. And sometimes you have to say, that is the answer I have. You know, I get that that's not what you were wanting or looking for, but that's what I have for you. That may sound harsh, but sometimes you just have to be that much protective of your privacy when you have someone who's trying to like take a screwdriver and a torch and a crowbar, you know, to get into that next rung. They cannot. Yeah. Any other questions, concerns?
Yeah, I have a follow-up question on what you just said, Olivia. Do you ever work with couples in this model? And if one person is more like the tell me everything or you're a liar, and the other person maybe is a little bit more don't get into my boundaries, like how would you use a model with something like that?
Same way. Such a great question. It's such a great tool. So you could say, have them both map out where they feel their partner has placed them, and also where they've placed their partner. And then you have a conversation around it, right? This is part of the hurt I experienced because I want to go here and I feel like you only let me here. And then we can have a conversation about that, right? And it's not that someone's right and someone's wrong, right? It's just information that we can use, because once I understand, oh, my partner doesn't feel safe because of whatever has happened in their life or whatever they've experienced with me. And so they need me way out there. And that doesn't work for me because I want to be here. And this is why I got married. And it's okay, because now we can talk. Well, how do we mitigate this? Where does this work for both of us? And how can we build trust, right? Maybe it's a trust issue with myself. And so this is where we can do some of those homework sharing exercises, because that does absolutely happen even within a partnership. So great thing to point out, Carrie. Also, there is you know, if you have the book, if you download the PDF, there is the model, but you could just draw it. Just draw. I just draw on a piece of paper. I draw on a whiteboard. I have clients draw it, and sometimes they'll make their phone contact if they think that person's never going to see their phone. They'll place someone on their model, and then they make that their phone contact so that when that person texts or call them, right away they're like, okay, I'm only sharing at acquaintance level, right? They see it before they even pick up the phone. If you think someone's going to see your phone, then you could just put an A in front of their name for acquaintance so that you're mindful. Okay, don't give away the farm just because they ask. Let me reserve some things for my privacy. So I'm mindful of what I'm sharing before I even engage in that conversation. But again, just draw it out on a piece of paper or whiteboard. Do the rungs. Just keep self, acquaintance, self, partner, acquaintance, stranger, and then anyone can fill in the middle to what works for their life. Someone doesn't work, take out coworkers, right? If someone is a coach, put on teammates or players. If they're on a team, teammates. Any significant relationship, they need to learn or they want to learn more about what's on the table, what's off the table, create that rung, and then have a conversation about defining it. Yeah. Okay, anybody else? Questions, comments, concerns?
I don't have a question.
Otherwise,
I would just comment that like, no wonder dating is so difficult because of all the different personalities and where people are at. Like, how do you know what's okay and like what's not okay? So I was just thinking about that. And then also I've done most of my career in SUD and some of that in residential, and just like the way that it's set up and the sharing is just like so like traumatic. And especially when, you know,
they're strangers.
like,
Right.
yeah, people are strangers and they're coming in on day 3 and like, read me your whole story and your timeline, you know, like, whoa. So, you know,
Yeah.
just thinking about that, you know,
Right.
and also just like mixed gender, like the groups and stuff with the different types of trauma and things, you know. So yeah, just a comment.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just have such
Yeah.
a oh,
Sorry, go
sorry.
ahead.
Oh, just to piggyback off of that, I feel like there is such a I don't know, cultural emphasis on being more vulnerable and how that's a good thing. Um, yeah, so it's just an interesting I don't know, thing to think about. And
Yeah, you're
like,
like,
yeah, like, well, maybe there's certain levels of vulnerability, and like it's not like you have to like share your whole life story with someone to and that's a you maybe you're not an open person if you don't, like yeah.
a bad thing, right? But really, we're talking about what's safe, what's healthy. If I don't know you and I don't know if you're trustworthy, why would I trust you? How is that ever going to be safe? No one's ever going to be able to convince me that's safe, right? If I don't even know your character, then I don't know you. I don't know if I trust you. If I know you and I know your character and you're not trustworthy, it's not healthy or safe for me to trust you. I'm going to keep getting traumatized, right? So the whole model was created to reduce trauma and re-victimization so we can actually learn, because really our fight or flight is supposed to keep us safe, and we're supposed to get better at surviving. So why are we more likely to experience more trauma when we have trauma? That means something's not working in our system, but the missing component is our gut. We're not learning what our gut is, and we're not learning what to do when our gut is activated. And then you have society shaming you. I'm always like, turn to my children, turn your locations off. Why on earth does someone need to know where you're at? Unless it's me and they don't even let me have it, right? Why does all these people need to know where you're at every moment of the day? No privacy. This next generation is not being taught. I mean, not that we were taught anything about privacy. I really wasn't. I couldn't have defined privacy. I didn't have a simple formula to understand. It's just here and here and myself, right? I didn't understand that. But knowing that now, it makes it so much easier to set and hold the boundary with confidence, because I don't need someone's permission. I don't need someone to say it's okay or to give me my rights. I already possess them, and now I know how to exercise them, right? Which you don't have to be cold, you don't have to be rude, but you can mean it, right? You can say no and mean it. You can say yes and mean it. Yeah. So great things to bring up. Good conversation. We could probably talk forever. I could.
Yeah, we are getting to that point in the presentation. We have about 1 minute left. So if anyone had like one more question or comment. Otherwise,
Okay, well, feel free to email me also or contact me if you ever have any questions or if I can help you in any other way with the model. And just thank you all so much for coming and for Laura and Carrie for allowing me to be here and for putting this on. So I really thank you.
thank you so much. This was so great and very informative, and I feel like it's a really good tool for, I know I feel like I learned a lot. So yeah, thank you.
Yeah, wonderful presentation. Thank you, Olivia.
Thank you. Thank you guys. Thank you all so much.
And
Thanks, Olivia.
just as a reminder, if anyone's looking for CEUs, I put my email in the chat, ticnutah@gmail.com, and I will send out this recording as well. I'll probably do that early next week. So yeah.
Will you say that again? I was late, so I didn't grab that.
Oh, the email is ticnutah@gmail.com. It's in the chat, the first thing that's in there.
I think
Yeah.
just because I was late. Oh, did you say TICN?
TICN, the Trauma Informed Care Network is what it stands for.
I get it. Okay, perfect. Thank you.
You're welcome. Yeah, and thank you all so much for attending, and thank you so much, Olivia.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Okay, bye everyone.
Bye.